Hey guys, what's up? It's once again mp4podcast.com. I want to give you guys my thoughts on the Nintendo Wii HD. Now, this isn't a video talking about the specs or anything, but I just want to give you my input where I think Nintendo is going in the future. I think Nintendo is running out of ideas for new consoles. Now, I'm not trying to start a fight with anybody. If anybody has any opinions, or you have a different opinion, please leave a respectful comment below. I don't mind if you disagree with me, but don't start with like you're stupid or something like that. Okay, moving on. All right. Now, don't get me wrong, the DS when it came out with the stylus was great. I mean, there's been other consoles, there's been two other consoles that had stylus before the DS. However, they weren't very successful companies. Tiger and I think the other one was the Palm had it, the stylus as well. And they weren't really known for gaming systems, especially the Palm one. I think wasn't. I think it was around $300 to $400. It was more of a business device that played games. And Tiger Direct was really crappy, black and white. Screen was really blurry. And then Nintendo put everything together properly. I mean, and the first Nintendo DS wasn't. The screen wasn't that great, but it was a lot better than anything Tiger has ever done. And at the time it was alright. It wasn't bad, but I mean, when you saw the DS Lite, you were like, wow. I mean, that was always basically what you said. It was wow. When you saw the DS Lite. Now, um, you know, the motion control that really put everything into play for the Wii. Everybody got excited about the motion control again. There was another console that used motion control, and all I want to say is that there's different technologies for motion control. I don't want to say the Power Glove or this or that. I'm talking about the infrared and how that works. There was another console, and it only lasted maybe about a year or two, and it wasn't that successful. I'll leave some links to some other videos about these other consoles in the description. GameStar81, who's a big YouTuber, did some of these reviews. Now we have the Kinect. We have which is it seems to be doing pretty well on Xbox 360. Microsoft is really pushing the Kinect. Uh, you know, Move on PS3 doesn't seem to be doing that well because and more for hardcore gamers. I think traditional gamers who are into first-person shooters and their Call of Duties, they want that quick twitch feel that you get on a controller. Um, Maybe they feel it's more accurate. I do think sometimes moving the wand is maybe more accurate for shooting. But however, moving around, I think maybe the traditional controller is better. I can't really say because I haven't tried both of them. I mean, I've tried the conditional. I mean, the wand I haven't tried. But what other technologies out there that Nintendo can grab onto? And maybe there are other technologies. I just haven't thought of them, or I don't know what's out there. However, it's scary to think that if Nintendo doesn't come up with another type of technology that revolutions gaming, what are they going to be doing in the future? I mean, I'm just looking at this from my point of view. The 8-bit Nintendo was the console that brought gaming back and made it popular again. Back in the day, Atari was popular. There was other consoles, ColecoVision. Then the video game crash happened in North America. I know UK gamers didn't have the crash because you guys had affordable computers, and Europe, I guess, as well. Steve Benway talked about that stuff. However, North American gamers were mostly all consoles, and until we got the 8-bit Nintendo back, the 8-bit Nintendo came to North America. That's what picked up gaming, and we had a little bit of Sega Master System, but mostly it was all Nintendo. And a lot of third-party games made it really fun to be playing this. A lot of great Japanese games coming to North America, and and then Sega Genesis came out, and Nintendo didn't bring out the Super Nintendo for about 2 years after Sega Genesis came out. And I know one of my friends, he was a diehard Nintendo fan. He's like, I'm not getting the Genesis. I'm getting the Super Nintendo. And then after maybe about a year, maybe a little longer, he just got sick of waiting for the Super Nintendo. He bought a Genesis, and he gamed on Genesis, and he loved the Genesis. And he was a hardcore Nintendo fan. And I love the Super Nintendo. I was probably one of my favorite systems of all time. I had better sound than the Genesis, had better graphics than the Genesis, had built-in mode 7. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Genesis, I like the Sega CD 32X, but I was really a fan of the Super Nintendo. For going up against Genesis and Super Nintendo, the Super Nintendo was better. Sports games were better on Genesis because the faster processor and it had less slowdown. But overall, Super Nintendo was the system to beat. A lot of great support from third parties on the Super Nintendo. I mean, you think third party for consoles. I mean, the 8-bit Nintendo had it. Sega Genesis had great third party support. Super Nintendo had great third party support. Then Nintendo started to dabble in with CD technology because Sega was doing it, and a little bit of TurboGrafx, but TurboGrafx really wasn't that big over here in the North America. So I believe they worked with Philips, and that's why you see the Mario's and the Zeldas on the Philips CDI, which really weren't great games. And then I guess they backed out of a deal with Philips, and then they went with Sony, and then Sony was developing the CD add-on for the Super Nintendo, and then Nintendo didn't want to bring it out because Sega CD wasn't selling that well, so they didn't want to do that. I think there might have been some lawsuits between Nintendo and Sony at that time, not quite sure. And then I think it was some engineer at Sony that says, "Hey, we really got to bring out our own system," blah blah blah. And he talks Sony into it, which became the PlayStation 1. And that's why Sony went with it, because there was one engineer, I guess, who was working on the Super Nintendo CD add-on, and he was just like, we got some good technology here. Let's just bring out our own system. Um, so, then the Nintendo 64 came out, and I know like the Nintendo hardcore fanboys buy it from Mario, Zelda, and the great Nintendo titles. But there really wasn't a lot of great third-party support. There was third-party support on the Nintendo 64, but it wasn't like every company was jumping there because the cartridges were expensive. The prices were very expensive on the Nintendo 64. Um, so, I mean, really, what was really Nintendo was making all that money was on Game Boy and Game Boy titles. I mean, there was a lot of third-party support on Game Boy. And then that whole Pokemon craze came out, and all the kids were just like, Pokemon, Pokemon, Pokemon. And it was just like Nintendo just hit on something. Nintendo has characters that are comparable to Disney characters, like Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Sonic's, in there too. And there's a few other, Disney characters like Crash Bandicoot that hasn't been doing too well so far, or Spyro the Dragon, but I mean, but mostly it's all Nintendo stuff, all the Nintendo characters, and that's what Nintendo's selling on. And the GameCube, I mean, they tried to go back to third-party support, and it was GameCube was a good system. I mean, it came out at $199. It was affordable. It was cheap. I mean, you could buy a DVD player for $100 back then and just get a GameCube, and you actually had a better DVD player than a PS2. The Xbox was $300, so you saved $100, and you know, And there were, the titles were good on GameCube, but it just seems like the third-party support and what everybody wanted out of third party was mostly all on PS2 or you know Xbox, and it just didn't seem like it did as well as the two other consoles. So then they came up with the Wii controller, which they was like, wow, that's really cool. Everybody likes it. And then some people were like, they liked it, and they were like playing it. And some people said they'd rather just play with a regular controller at times. And I think the 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 feeling of always having to pick up that controller, moving your arms around all the time. Sometimes you just want to lay back and just use a regular controller and play with that. And I just don't think they're going to be able to repeat that success. I mean, unless they can make something like the holodeck, like in Star Trek. I don't know what they can do, Nintendo, because I know Nintendo, the way they like to sell their consoles is they like to sell their consoles at profit, make some profit on their consoles, or they're going to have to sell them and break even. So if it costs them $300 to make, they're going to have to sell it for $300. Maybe they have to. I don't know if they can work something out with retailers, or retailers don't make anything, and it's just on software end. But the problem with Nintendo or any of these, you know, companies who are strictly just video game companies is that's their only revenue of money. Where if you look at Sony, Sony makes camcorders, they make television sets. I mean, they make MP3 players, but mostly everybody wants an iPhone or an iPod. So Sony makes a lot of different products. So even if they lost, you know, the PlayStation market, and there was a video game crash or whatever, else, some other console came away and destroyed uh, the PS3, and nobody was buying PS3, Sony could still, uh, you know, be making money with other products. Microsoft's a little different. I mean, they're kind of like Sony in a way because they have Windows, but I mean, if anything ever big came by and another operating system that could take away the Windows market share, uh, there's not too much for Microsoft to sell. I mean, I know they make some peripherals. I mean, I know they make some webcams. They make some mice. My mouse on my laptop is a Microsoft mouse. It's a really good one. It's one of those laser ones. Um, you know, I don't know what else Microsoft makes besides a couple of things for the PC, like the mice and webcams, and I think they make keyboards. Yeah, they make keyboards, but they make stuff for the computer basically if it's hardware, and they make Windows software. Primarily, they make Windows, Office, and maybe a few other things. I'm not quite sure. Then they got Xbox. So, I mean, they do have some latitude here and there. Even if they lost the video game console and nobody ever bought Xbox again, they could still make profit. But where is Nintendo? I mean, all they have is the home console and then the portable market. That's all they have. So if the Wii HD fails, I mean, they're gonna have to uh, get money from the DS and the 3DS. And now, I mean, the DS was losing sales because of smartphones and the iPod Touch and the iPad, where people weren't buying DS games as much. Because it's just my opinion. I just want to say in this video, if you disagree with me, you can have a different opinion, but please be respectful in the comments. I don't like people when they say, hey, you're effing stupid, or that's retarded. State your point, and I won't have any problems. That, people, if you're going to work and you have a phone on it. Most people have cellular phones. They're going to have a smartphone. And the best smartphone out of all smartphones is the iPhone. Okay? It has the best games on it. Um, it's an MP3 player. It's an HD camcorder. It's a still camcorder. It takes great photographs. 720p recording the iPhone 4, 5 megapixel stills. iPhone 5 is coming out in the fall. That's rumored to be 1080p. It's going to be 8 megapixels. I mean, there's a little bit of rumor that it might be 3D. I don't really know. I know there are two 3D Android phones. They're shooting 720p and there's some 3D games just like the 3DS. So, it's different nowadays. I mean, a lot of people don't want to admit it because they grew up either with Game Boy, the Game Boy Advanced, the DS, and whatever. And they think, well, the cell phone's on. It's not a gaming system. It is a game. If you can play a game, then at that moment in time, it's a gaming console. And Apple has really been going after the gaming market. I think they had somebody from id Software who worked on the operating system. Now they got somebody from, I think, Nintendo, who's working on the iOS operating system. They're tweaking it to play games. And I have to say something. I'm a Windows user. I don't use Macs. I have an iPhone 3GS and an iPod Touch 4th generation. And I just have to say that the iOS is an amazing operating system. I mean, I have two Androids. I like them, but for the most part, they're not up to par with iOS. Just where it works. So you don't even have to think about it. You don't have to manage it. It's like Windows. I mean, you install something, you can screw up your computer, blah blah blah, and things can be a headache. Macs aren't like that. It's just click and go. That's how easy everything is. So I mean, I don't know where Nintendo's going to be. I mean, I don't know if they should look into other avenues of electronic devices and make other electronic devices. They do make very good electronics. I mean, well, except for the 8-bit Nintendo, the original, there was a design flaw with blowing on cartridges. The contacts didn't really always hit right. But after that, they've always made good products. So, I mean, maybe Nintendo should look into making televisions, Blu-ray machines, and other things. I think they get a very strong brand name. I think a lot of people like to buy their brand. Maybe they should look into making camcorders, cameras, some other things like that. I mean, if I'm able to buy a good Sony camcorder and Sony makes a good console, maybe I'd buy a nice camcorder that was made by Nintendo. And I think it would be good for the company because if they can't compete with Xbox 360, I mean Microsoft and Sony, because what Microsoft and Sony do, in a way, it's kind of dirty marketing. I think I don't know, the Xbox when it came out was 400. I think it cost $600 to make, and the PS3 was like, I don't know, like $700 to make or whatever it is. They sell these consoles at a loss, sometimes $100, or $200, or $300 at a loss, and then they just want to make it up on software sales. Nintendo doesn't want to do that, and now you have two very strong corporations just pushing into this market. And I think really the last thing that's going to hold Nintendo together, if they don't change their company, is going to be their Disney characters. There'll just be people who will just buy it to play the Marios and that. Now, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of the guy's name. The Japanese game designer that makes Mario and Zelda. He kind of seems to me to be what um, the face of Nintendo is. Okay, now I know Nintendo has put out other good quality games, but my question is, what happens when he retires? What happens when he leaves? Okay, now this is the same question I have is what happens when Steve Jobs leaves Apple? Will Apple be as successful as they are without Steve Jobs? Okay, it just seems very weird to me when you have great minds and great thinkers where they can take a company and make it so successful. But what happens when that great mind leaves that company? Okay, now I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other great people at Apple, very smart, intelligent people. There's a lot of great, smart, intelligent people at Nintendo. But when Steve Jobs left Apple, the company kind of went down the pooper a little bit. I don't think Steve Jobs has made every decision has made, right. I think he was working on a computer called Lisa, but overall, he's always been at the top, making the right decisions. Okay, it's kind of like Nintendo has always been at the top, making the right decisions, except for the Virtual Boy. There's a lot of people that like the Virtual Boy, and I think people look back at it now at the time that it might have not been as bad as people thought it was. I personally didn't like the Virtual Boy. I played it for a few minutes. I had a really bad migraine. But people were trying to think out of the box at Nintendo about new technologies. And in a way, I think that's kind of cool. Would I bash the Virtual Boy? Uh, no, just because not everybody had headaches from it. I mean, it's kind of like I don't get headaches. I don't have any eye strain from playing on the 3DS, but other people do. So, I mean, do I think somebody should bash the 3DS because it gives them eye strains? What I'm saying is, not every console is for everybody. What works for me may not work for you. So, your your opinions, um, I think are still important. So if they do hurt your eyes, I think it's perfectly fine for people to say that on YouTube or any other place on the internet. However, if it doesn't affect me, then my point of view is just as valid. And I think consumers should probably go to stores like GameStop, Best Buy, Target, Sears, or whatever, and play the system for themselves. See if it hurts their eyes. Try it out before they put down $250. You know, so I mean that's what I did. I remember going to Leechmere back in the day. I played the Virtual Boy, gave me a headache, and I didn't play it again. It just wasn't for me. I can't. I got such a bad headache. Um, it didn't work for me. Other people play and don't have any problems. So it's a personal preference. I don't know why um, the 3DS gives some people headaches and other people it doesn't give it headaches. I mean, me personally, sometimes I turn off the 3D. Um, I think sometimes I like to play 2D and other times I like to play 3D. So I kind of like go in between the two. But that's my opinion. And then, I mean, I hope Nintendo does good with the Wii HD, but I just don't know where the company is going to be going in the next, 5 to 10 years. I mean, it's very scary with all the money that Microsoft and Sony have, and unless they can make a holodeck, I just don't have any other ideas and how much they can improve gaming um, after the Wii, because the Wii seemed like it put in motion the Kinect and the PlayStation Move. Those two products would not exist if it wasn't for the Wii. So I mean, the new Wii controller for where hearing and touch, it seems like they got that idea a little bit from the iPhone and some other thing, maybe some other things. And the NGP is a little bit based off of the iPhone, the touch technology, what's going on in gaming and stuff like that. And believe me, these companies, they buy all the products and they have all their researchers studying these devices. They see what they could pull over here and implement things like that. But anyway, guys, this is mp4podcast.com. I know this is a long video, but if you listen to the whole thing, I really appreciate it. If you like this video, if you like my marbles juggling around my skull, subscribe to the channel. Once again, guys, take care. Later, guys. Bye.